Berlin. 1933, flames devour the Reichstag. Smoke coils into the night sky like a signal flare from the unconscious of a nation. Crowds gather. Some terrified. Some thrilled. Within weeks, fear becomes policy. Policy becomes persecution. And millions convince themselves they are righteous. No one believes they are the villain. That is how darkness wins. Not by announcing itself as evil, but by wearing the mask of virtue. And if you think this story is about politics, you are mistaken. It is about the hidden architecture of your own mind. Because the same mechanism that allowed a civilization to project its shadow outward is alive inside you. And if you are an empath, it is especially alive. Carl Jung watched Europe unravel and recognized something chilling: societies collapse when individuals refuse to confront their inner darkness. While Sigmund Freud dissected repression through desire, Jung saw a deeper force, archetypal, mythic, almost spiritual. He called it the shadow. Not the evil you commit, but the parts of you you refuse to admit exist. Your anger. Your envy. Your hunger to dominate. Your craving to be chosen. The empath believes they are different. You believe your compassion places you above cruelty. You believe your sensitivity makes you immune to harm. But Jung says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Read that slowly. The traits you deny do not disappear. They operate behind the curtain. The empath's tragedy is not that you feel too much. It is that you disown the parts of yourself that feel wrong. You were praised for being kind. So you buried your anger. You were loved for being understanding. So you suffocated your need to be understood. You were valued for sacrifice. So you learned to erase yourself. And what you bury does not die. It ferments. You begin to attract chaos. You call it bad luck. You become the rescuer in every relationship. You call it destiny. You feel drained, unseen, quietly resentful. You call it empathy. But is it empathy, or is it unconscious martyrdom? Jung broke from Freud because he believed the psyche was not merely a machine of impulses. It was a battlefield of symbols. And the shadow, when ignored, becomes mythic. It possesses you. You start saying yes when your body screams no. You tolerate disrespect and call it patience. You suppress rage and call it maturity. But suppressed rage does not disappear. It leaks. Through passive aggression. Through self-pity. Through secret superiority. Friedrich Nietzsche warned, "He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster." Empaths fight monsters daily. You sit with trauma. You absorb emotional storms. You hold space for broken souls. But if you never confront your own capacity for harm, you risk something subtle and devastating. You begin to believe your suffering makes you morally superior. That belief is shadow disguised as virtue. The empath's shadow does not roar. It whispers. I am better because I endure. I am deeper because I suffer. I am purer because I forgive. And slowly, your identity fuses with being the wounded savior. Without broken people to fix, who are you? This is the question most empaths fear. Because your goodness may not be entirely selfless. It may be survival. If you were once abandoned, you learned to become indispensable. If love felt conditional, you became exceptional at meeting others' needs. You call it compassion. But sometimes, it is fear. Fear that if you stop giving, you will disappear. Jung's insight was brutal in its clarity. The shadow contains not only what is dark, but what is powerful. Your aggression. Your ambition. Your ability to walk away. If you reject these traits, they appear in distorted form. You attract dominant personalities because you deny your own authority. You encounter manipulation because you refuse to see your own subtle manipulations. Projection is not accidental. It is psychological gravity. Nations project their violence onto enemies. Families project their dysfunction onto one child. Empaths project their denied power onto the people who control them. And then you say, why does this always happen to me? Because the shadow you refuse becomes the fate you repeat. The most dangerous person is not the one who admits their darkness. It is the one who insists they have none. History proves it. Every tyrant believed they were justified. Every extremist believed they were saving something sacred. The empath is not exempt from this dynamic. You can become tyrannical in subtle ways. Through guilt. Through emotional withdrawal. Through silent moral judgment. And if this stings, good. Growth rarely feels comfortable. Jung says, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Enlightenment is not purity. It is integration. Integration means you admit, yes, I can be selfish. Yes, I can be cruel. Yes, I can choose myself over others. And instead of fearing these truths, you claim them. When anger becomes conscious, it turns into boundaries. When ambition becomes conscious, it turns into direction. When selfishness becomes conscious, it turns into self-respect. This is the evolution of the empath. From fragile light to grounded fire. From compulsive giving to chosen generosity. From fear-based kindness to sovereign compassion. Wholeness feels dangerous because it removes your halo. You can no longer hide behind being the good one. You must stand as a complex human being capable of both harm and healing. That complexity is power. Because when you know you can harm, and choose not to, your morality becomes real. It is no longer performance. It is discipline. It is awareness. It is strength. The world does not collapse because of darkness alone. It collapses when people deny their darkness and project it outward. The empath's responsibility is not endless sacrifice. It is inner integration. If you integrate your shadow, you cannot be easily manipulated by guilt. If you acknowledge your need for control, you stop attracting those who dominate you. If you embrace your anger, you stop drowning in resentment. The shadow integrated becomes discernment. And discernment is not cold. It is fierce love. Here, within Legend's legacy, we do not worship heroes as flawless beings. We examine the forces that shape them, the wars within that define the wars outside. Because every legend faced their shadow. Some were consumed. Some integrated it. Now you stand at that same psychological crossroads. Will you continue identifying as the endlessly self-sacrificing empath? Or will you become something rarer, an integrated soul who can love deeply without abandoning themselves? Whose vision resonates more with you, the fragile purity that avoids conflict, or the conscious individual who dares to face their own darkness? Write your thoughts in the comments. Your insight may awaken someone silently struggling. If this reflection unsettled you, stay with Legend's legacy. Subscribe, not for comfort, but for confrontation. Not for easy answers, but for deeper awareness. Because the shadow is patient. It waits beneath your virtues. And whether it controls you, or strengthens you, depends on whether you have the courage to look directly into it, and recognize yourself.